let's jump right in. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something I've always been curious about, the Islamic month of Rajab.
Ooh, that's a fascinating one.
Yeah, I've heard the name, but to be honest, I don't really know much about it.
Well, you're in for a treat then.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm ready to learn. Takes us to the Quran,
Oh, nice.
specifically to Surah at Tawbah, verse 36. It talks about the 12 months in the Islamic calendar,
Right.
but then it singles out 4 of them as like extra special, calling them sacred or haram.
Right.
And, I have to admit, when I hear the word haram, I usually think of things that are forbidden.
Yeah, that's a common association.
So that kind of piques my interest, like what's going on here?
It's a great question, and it really highlights the unique nature of these months. So we're talking about Zulqa'dah, Zulhijjah, Muharram, and of course Rajab.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not haram in the sense of being off limits.
Okay.
It's more like they're elevated, set apart.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, these were times when warfare was actually forbidden.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a time for the entire community to kind of shift its focus inward,
Yeah.
almost like a society-wide retreat,
Wow, that's a really powerful image. Like everyone just pressing pause on their regular lives.
Exactly. It was a collective pause for spiritual growth.
Yeah.
That's the kind of energy we're talking about here.
Okay, I'm starting to get a sense of why these months are so special. But this idea of sacred months, it's not just a Quranic thing, right?
You're right. The article mentions that it actually goes back even further.
Interesting.
We see this thread connecting to pre-Islamic traditions going all the way back to prophets like Abraham and Ishmael.
Wow, so it's like this ancient concept that's been carried through different periods of time.
Exactly. It really speaks to the enduring power of these sacred periods, how they transcend any specific time or belief system.
I love that this idea that it's like a universal human impulse, to set aside time for something bigger than ourselves.
Absolutely.
So we've got this historical and spiritual through line, and then the article brings in a hadith,
Oh, yeah.
a saying of the Prophet Muhammad from Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, and it basically confirms Rajab's place as one of these revered months.
Right.
But what really stood out to me was where it falls in the Islamic calendar. Like, it's not just randomly placed, is it?
You're right about that.
Yeah.
The placement is incredibly significant. Rajab sits right between Jumadil Akhir and Shaban.
Okay.
Those are the 2 months leading up to Ramadan.
Right.
So think of it like a stepping stone, a period of preparation for the intense spiritual journey of Ramadan.
I see.
Like almost like a, spring training for your soul before the big game.
I love that analogy. Okay, so it's not just about like abstaining from certain things. It's about actively preparing yourself mentally and spiritually for what's to come.
You got it.
That makes a lot of sense. But then there's this whole other layer to Rajab that I'm curious about, and that's the practice of fasting.
Mm-hmm.
The article mentions this book called Lathaif al-Maruf Fi Mali Mawasim Alamin al-Mazaif by Ibn Rajab.
Oh, yeah, classic.
And it sounds like fasting during Rajab is about more than just, giving up food and drink.
Absolutely. Ibn Rajab saw it as a way to really purify the heart before Ramadan, a way to align yourself with the divine. Yeah.
Oh, so it's like a deeper level of intentionality there.
Right. It's about creating that space for introspection and a deeper connection with your faith.
That's beautiful. It sounds like a really mindful way to approach the month. But the article also mentions that there are like different opinions on exactly how to approach fasting during Rajab.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Not at all. There's actually a hadith from Abu Dawood that encourages fasting during the sacred months.
Yeah.
But it acknowledges that you can fast some days and not others.
Oh, interesting.
And this is where we see the dynamic nature of Islamic thought. Some scholars like Ibn Umar and Sufyan al-Thawri favored fasting throughout all 4 sacred months.
Okay.
But others had, different viewpoints.
So even within a shared tradition, there's room for individual interpretation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really highlights the richness and the complexity of Islamic thought.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me, How does this diversity of interpretation actually play out in practice?
It really is. You have this shared foundation,
Yeah.
of faith and tradition.
Right.
But within that, there's space for individual expression and understanding.
It's like Rajab provides the container,
Yeah,
but what you put in it, that's up to you.
that's a great way to put it.
It's making me think about how we approach sacred time in our own lives, even outside of organized religion, Is that something you see reflected in other traditions?
It's a universal human impulse, really.
Uh-huh.
Think about like the Sabbath in Judaism and Christianity, or Buddhist festivals like Vesak. Each tradition has its own way of marking those sacred periods.
Yeah.
But the underlying principle is often the same. It's about stepping outside of the ordinary and into a realm of deeper meaning.
So it's like hitting the pause button on the everyday
Exactly.
and turning into a different frequency. I love that. But for someone who might not be familiar with Islamic traditions, why should they care about Rajab?
That's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah, what's the takeaway for them?
It brings us to a crucial point, I think.
Okay.
The significance of Rajab goes beyond any one religion or culture.
Interesting.
It's about recognizing the importance of sacred time in our lives.
Regardless of our beliefs or backgrounds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Rajab, with its emphasis on peace and spiritual reflection, it offers a powerful example of how we can all create those moments of pause and introspection.
So it's not about converting to Islam or adopting any specific rituals.
No, not at all.
It's about recognizing a universal human need
Right.
and finding ways to fulfill it in our own unique ways.
Yeah. Exactly. It's an invitation to examine our own lives and consider how we might incorporate similar practices.
Okay, I like that.
What resonates with us? How can we create our own sacred time, even amidst the busyness of daily life?
Yeah, that busyness is real.
It is. But maybe it's through meditation or spending time in nature or engaging in acts of service. I mean, the possibilities are endless, really.
I'm really drawn to this idea of actively creating sacred time.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the daily grind and just lose sight of those deeper needs, you know?
It happens to all of us.
It really does. It makes me think about my own life. Where are those pockets of stillness and reflection?
Yeah.
How can I be more intentional about cultivating them?
Those are powerful questions to be asking.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that we have agency.
Mm-hmm.
We have the power to shape our experiences and create space for what truly matters.
Okay, so we've explored the Quranic basis for Rajab's importance.
Right.
We talked about the confirmation from Hadith, the practice of fasting, and the diverse interpretations within Islamic thought. But we've also zoomed out and connected it to this universal human need for sacred time.
Absolutely.
What are some other key insights that stand out to you from this deep dive?
Whoa.
What do you hope our listener will walk away with?
I think one of the most powerful takeaways is that sacred time isn't just something that happens to us.
Right.
It's something we can actually choose to create.
It's like taking ownership of our spiritual lives.
Exactly. And it doesn't require a specific religion or belief system.
Yeah.
It's about tapping into that universal human need for reflection and connection.
And what's fascinating is that this idea of sacred time, it manifests in so many different ways.
Oh, absolutely.
Across cultures and throughout history.
It really does.
Yeah.
We've touched on a few examples, but the diversity is truly remarkable.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does sacred time look like in other traditions we haven't even talked about?
Right.
Is it communal gatherings, pilgrimages, rituals, or even just quiet moments of solitude?
It could be all of that and more. It's about finding what speaks to you personally and creating space for those practices in your life.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Rajab, I hope our listeners are walking away not just with a better understanding of this Islamic month,
Right.
but also with a sense of the broader human need for sacred time.
And maybe even little inspiration
Yeah,
to explore how they can create those moments of meaning and connection in their own lives.
that's a beautiful thought. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the heart of Rajab and the universal search for sacred time.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep creating space for what truly matters in your lives. We'll see you next time.